Welcome to part 5 of building this cigar box guitar. Our goal for this episode is to completely wrap up this project. By the end of this video, we should have this thing strung up and be able to hear how it sounds. Will we succeed? You're going to have to just stick around and find out. I'm Jeff, you're watching Home Built Workshop. Let's get to work. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. We are back on the cigar box guitar build. In the last episode, we carved the neck, sanded the neck, finished the neck, and it is attached to the box. We're going to jump right in, not waste any time. We're going to try to get the rest of this assembly done in this episode. We're going to start off by installing some tuners. That way we have kind of a reference point for locating the bridge. Initially, the tuners that I was going to use for this project were sent over to me by the team at Cigar. Cigar is a name that I've been hearing quite a bit lately in the guitar parts and accessories world, and they've contacted me on more than one occasion wanting me to try out different things at different times. Well, this time around, I said, hey, I've got a perfect project to test out some of your tuners. Send me over a set of chrome ones. Again, I forgot, gold accents don't quite work with chrome tuners. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to try these out on this build. I'm going to hang on to these for a future project, but I do have something else from Cigar that we're going to put to use a little bit later in this build, and this is something that I'm actually pretty excited to test out. So instead, I've got a set of Godot gold tuners here that we're going to use a few of anyway for this build. Installing tuners on a cigar box guitar is no different than installing tuners on any other guitar. We're just not installing 6. We're only going to use 3. I'm using the same bushings, the same everything. They're just regular guitar tuners. And we have 3 left over for another build. Kind of a 2-for-1. This is where the build starts to come together and it really starts to look like an instrument. I'm going to snug those down with a 10mm wrench just slightly. I just want to hold them in place. And with a little bit of tension on there, we'll flip the instrument over and we can use a straight edge against this flat back of each tuner, and this will allow us to line everything up in a nice straight line. Once they're all straight, then we can carefully snug them down, taking care to not let them turn. There we go. Now I want to drill the hole for these tiny screws which help hold the tuner in place. I have a drill bit that I always use, a very small one, a little bit smaller than even these tiny screws, but I've got the end wrapped in electrical tape and that sort of acts like a depth stop. That way I can't just plunge this bit all the way through the headstock. Then all I need to do is chuck this thing in a drill and we can drill away. And like I always recommend, we're going to use a little bit of wax on these tiny screws. It's even more important on the tiny screws because we definitely don't want to break one of these off. And as always, we're going to use a screwdriver, not any sort of impact driver or powered tool. Do it by hand. We're going to go nice and slow. On these real small ones, I like to kind of go back and forth, almost like you were tapping a hole with a tap and die set. If it feels like it's getting a little tough, I'll take the screw back out, put a little more wax. We're trying to be very cautious at this step. We want the screw to go all the way in, but we don't want to break it off. Back and forth, just like tapping a hole. Really helps until it's seated all the way. And we'll do that for all 3 of them. Now I'm ready to locate the bridge and get that attached. For this build, I'm using a hardtail style bridge, very similar to what you'd find on a normal electric guitar. It makes it really easy to adjust because you have the same intonation style adjustment as well as string height adjustment. But there's a lot of other options out there. I've done quite a few of these builds where I've built my own kind of wooden bridge with just a piece of fret wire on the top, shape the bridge kind of however you want, and it works fine. The advantage to doing it that way is that you can slide it around and adjust it. You can tilt it one way or another to adjust almost individual string intonation, and it works great. But like I said, for this build, we're using this hardtail bridge. We need to figure out where that thing's gonna live. Now I know that this bridge is gonna go somewhere in this location, but we need to make sure we have it in the correct position front to back, but also side to side. The front to back position will measure from the nut to the saddles and make sure we're at 25 inches. But to get the side to side measurement, we're actually going to make this really simple by using some fishing line. And I guess it's probably kind of hard to see that. We're going to sort of quote unquote string this up with fishing line. That way we can get a visual of where the strings are going to land. And then we can move this back and forth, then adjust for our front to back, and that'll tell us exactly where we need to put the bridge. Here, I'm just winding the fishing line between the tuners and the different saddles on the bridge. So I've kind of got this set so that I can pull on the loose end and it'll change where the bridge goes, kind of a block and tackle kind of thing. It's fished from one to the other to the other. The main thing I'm worried about is making sure that this center string lines up with the center of the fretboard markers. I'm not worried that the bridge is offset from this label because there's nothing we can do about that. I want to make sure that that center string goes right down the center of the neck. I already know we're going to have enough room for the outside strings. I just have those there as sort of a reference. It's really the main center string that I'm really concerned with. In order to make sure we have this in the right spot, I want to bring one of these saddles all the way back to kind of mimic the adjustment. And we're going to have one of them all the way forward as far as we might go. And then this one we'll put sort of midway, I guess. Basically what I want to do is try to land this in the middle of the travel. That way I know we're going to have travel on the saddles forward as well as some movement backwards. That way we've got the full range of intonation adjustment. So I'm going to take my measurement from this middle saddle, which is sort of the middle position between the two. And there's 25 inches right there. So that's where that bridge goes. Now I'll mark those holes. At least the first two anyway. Perfect. I decided to drill the pilot holes by hand, but using a drill press is a perfect option as well. Moving right along, with the bridge in place, we're ready for electronics. For that, we're going to keep it fairly simple. Not a whole lot of bells and whistles because, well, we don't really need it. We're going to install a pickup, we're going to install a volume control, and then an output jack. For the pickup, I found this really cool flat surface mount humbucker pickup. It's really neat because, well, it mounts right on the surface, really easy to install. We don't have to cut any recesses or anything like that. Then we have this little decorative cover plate, which will cover the whole thing up and sit right on the top as well. To lay out where the pickup is going to go, I've taken the cover plate and put a piece of painter's tape on there, and then I've marked the center line. Now I can use my fishing line string as a center line and just line up the two wherever I want this. I think I want that right about there, with the center line of the cover plate lined up with the center line of my fishing line string. That's where I want to install the pickup. I'm going to temporarily put just this pickup ring in place, just with a couple screws. I'm not even going to tighten it down all the way. That gives me a location for me to drop the pickup in, and I need to drill a hole for the wires to go down inside the box. And with everything in place, now I know exactly where that hole needs to be drilled. I can just mark that out. Pull the pickup ring back off. And it's at this step where things get just a teensy bit complicated because of the construction methods in the way that I fit the neck to this cigar box. I can't just drill a hole straight through and run the wire out the bottom side of the neck because I made the neck go all the way to the bottom of the box. So what I'm going to do is drill partway through the neck straight down, and then I'm going to come in from the side and basically kind of make a L-shaped tunnel. That way the wire can go down in and then pass out the neck. Depending on how you build your neck, you may or may not have to do this. I just want to point out that because of some of the choices I made earlier, makes this step just a little bit harder. Once I drill this first hole, I'm going to have to pull the neck back out of the box, unscrew it and all of that, and then drill in from the side, then put it all back in, which also means I got to take the bridge off. So just think ahead. It's kind of like what I've said in many other videos. Order of operations is important. Not only in guitar building, but in a lot of projects. You always have to be thinking of how is what I'm doing right now going to affect something later on? What processes am I going to need to do later that my decision now is going to affect? Just think through things, be logical, and most of the time, it's going to work out just fine. I ended up drilling this same style of passage a little bit later on for the bridge ground. Just so you can see how this will work. Wires will come through just like this. And then this will sit on the top of the box. Then I can wire this to all the rest of the controls. While I have the neck out of the box, I may as well take advantage of that and lay out where we're going to drill holes for the volume control as well as the output jack. I've got these gold football style jack plates. I want to use one of those for the output jack, but I also found that if I take a separate one, it fits a volume pot really well too. And I think that would be kind of a cool look if we use one of those as sort of a grommet for the volume control and then also one for the output jack. Keeps everything symmetrical and kind of enforces that gold accent. Before I drill out the hole though, I got to keep in mind how far in this wood goes from the edge of the box. If I measure this, that's about 9/16 in before we get to this open space. So I know that I've got to have at least 9/16 from the edge of the plate to the edge of the box. So if I measure in 9/16, that puts the center line of our screw hole about 1 1/8 from the end. I'll use a piece of painter's tape on the top of the box. This way I can make some marks on the tape. So we'll just measure in 1 1/8. Draw a line. That way we can keep all of the screw holes in line. Double check our measurements. And to the drill press we go. With the jack plate secured, now I can just add the volume pot and the output jack. These are held in place with just their regular lock nut. So just checking the clearances here on the output jack, and I've got a little bit of an issue. The lug that sticks down on the jack hits this piece of mahogany, this reinforcing strip. Now, I thought I could just take a Forstner bit and remove a little bit of material, which I did. But I think the problem I'm going to run into is, since the Forstner bit has the centering point, I think that point is going to poke through the back. So really, I think the only way to make this work is to just do it old school. I'm going to just grab a chisel, remove some of this material, sort of carve out a probably somewhat raggedy looking recess here. I suppose I could use a router and very carefully remove some more material. But I think by the time I get the router set up, I could have that material removed with a good old-fashioned chisel. Well, I've got a problem still. If I use an instrument cable, plug it in, it plugs in just fine, but the box still won't fully close. If I close it all the way, it wants to push the plug out of the jack. I can't really remove any more material there, or it's going to be poking through the back of the box. So I think my only option now is to drill this hole all the way through the back of the box. That's going to remove more than 1/8 of an inch of thickness, which should allow it to close completely, but we're going to have an unsightly hole in the back. I found a piece of brass here that we can polish up, cut to shape, and make a little control plate cover that'll fit right over that in the back. We'll make it a feature and another opportunity to bring this brass gold color into the instrument. Right here, I'm using a Forstner bit to drill completely through the box. This is going to give us the clearance we need for the jack. Now we'll just plug this in, nice and secure. Now the box closes all the way. Now we need to shift gears for a minute and make a cover plate for that hole. If I measure this piece of brass that I have, it's about 2 inches long. So I want to cut this off so that it's 2 inches square. You ever feel disgusted with yourself when you reach over to stop the camera from recording and you realize that you just started it from recording? All you missed was me using a hacksaw to cut this piece off. Now this piece is close to 2 inches square. We just need to clean up this edge, round the corners off on the belt grinder. I'll make sure to hit record next time. I feel like most of this little side quest of creating a brass control cavity cover is pretty self-explanatory. I'm cutting the piece to size, cleaning up the edges on the belt grinder, drilling some pilot holes for the mounting screws, and rounding off the corners on the belt grinder. Now to prepare for the buffing process, I need to spend a few minutes sanding the edges especially. They're still a little bit rough with deep scratches off the belt grinder, so I'm using a little bit finer grit of sandpaper just to sand the edges smooth and remove a lot of those deep scratches. This makes the polishing process go a lot quicker. To polish this up, I'm just using some green jeweler's rouge on my homemade DIY buffer. I built this little buffer right here on the channel. If you scroll back far enough, you can find that video. That shined up really nice. After attaching our cover plate with some more brass screws, our little side quest is complete. There we go. Our little control cavity cover, I think it looks super awesome. Fits with the rest of the color theme we got going on here, the red and the kind of gold brass color. Works awesome. That's going to work great. Keep in mind that the only reason that this was even an issue is because this box is so thin. I've mentioned it in some of the other parts of this build. This is the thinnest cigar box I have ever used for a build, and I've been hanging on to it for several years for that exact reason. I knew there was going to be challenges with this one because it's so thin. Up until now, all of the boxes I've used have been tall enough where you could put anything into the top and it was not an issue. There was just a lot of space. This is the skinniest one as far as height, and it's the most challenging so far for stuff just like this. What would work perfectly on another build just isn't working on this one. because the box is so thin. So if you're working on a box that's taller than this, then you're not going to really have any issues. I guess it'd be helpful to give you some context as far as how thick this box is. This is 1 5/16 inches. So this is thinner than even a pretty slim solid body electric guitar. That's why I'm having some of these issues and why I'm deciding to use some of these methods. That's also one of the reasons why I'm trying to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing in this build series so that you understand. I want to be able to give you options and explain exactly why I'm doing things, not just throw it together and say, oh look, we finished a guitar. I kind of want to give you some of my thought process to kind of help you, maybe give you some points to think about while you're building your own instrument. With that complete, let's test this out. It's perfect. Now I can put the neck back in and we can carry on. There we go, back together. That looks super cool, nice and shiny. Remember that order of operations I mentioned not long ago? Well, for the next couple of steps, that's going to be extremely important. I need to work on getting this wired up. But in order to do that, I have to be able to get to the inside of the box. That means I can't attach the bridge just yet because those screws go through the top and into the neck. So that's fine, we'll just leave the bridge until a little bit later. I also need to attach this pickup to the top. But again, when I do that and secure this pickup ring with screws, it goes down into the neck. So I need to leave those unattached for right now. Thankfully, this pickup has really long leads on there, which is going to be perfect because I can thread that down through all of our little wiring pathways here. So that will put our pickup right here, which is where it needs to be. And we've got enough slack that we can leave the lid open while we do our wiring, make our connections. And actually, having this little control cavity cover here might be quite helpful because I can remove that, and when we close the lid, I'll be able to pull that slack out of this cable so that we don't pinch the wires in here on the neck. See, I actually meant to do that. For the wiring on this, I'm keeping it super simple. We're going to have the pickup gets wired straight to the volume control, which goes straight to the output jack. That's it. No tone control, no fancy switching or anything like that. There's no need for that stuff. This is a very simple instrument, and just the fact that we've got a humbucker pickup in there is cool enough. So we're just going to keep it really simple. It's going to be a piece of cake to wire up. If there's one part to this build that I'm not going in depth on, that's going to be the wiring. And that's mainly because there's a gazillion different ways you can wire up any given instrument. There's so many different options, different ways you can go between different switching and different tone circuits and different pickup configurations. And really the method that you choose is up to you. What I am going to do though is find the wiring diagram that I use for this, and I'll post it down below. That way you can bring it up and check it out for yourself. The exact diagram that I'm using. Again, super simple, super quick. Let's fire up that soldering iron. Right here, I'm soldering the bridge ground to a piece of copper foil shielding tape. This piece of tape will actually sit on top of the box when it's all said and done, and then the bridge will get mounted on top of it. It's kind of my method of installing a bridge ground. From here, we'll just make all the connections to the 500K volume pot, as well as the output jack. And boom, after no time at all, we're done. I think right here you can kind of see that second channel that I drilled for the bridge ground, just like I did for the pickup wire to go down through. So now that everything's wired, I just need to work those wires out of the way so we can close this box. I've removed the little cover plate that we made just to help pull the slack out of the wires. It actually works out really good. Bam. Box is closed. Wires are out of the way. Just tuck this stuff back in there, and we can reinstall the cover plate. And now I'm going to pull the backing off of this piece of foil tape. Since that tape is connected right to the bridge ground, when we install the bridge, the tape gets stuck right to the back of the bridge, which gives us a nice bridge ground. Bridge installed. Now all we need to do is secure this pickup. Now since we're using this pickup ring, this doesn't connect to the pickup, so it doesn't really secure it. And I suppose in theory you could just use that to sort of hold it in place, but there's a chance that it could rattle around, and we definitely don't want that. I'm going to use a couple drops of hot glue in each of the corners to hold this pickup in place. Let's hold that down till the glue sets. The reason I didn't just put a giant blob in the middle, which is what I would have rather done, is I don't know if that much hot glue would affect anything with this pickup. I didn't want a bunch of heat going into that as the glue cooled to affect anything. I don't know if that's an issue or not, but I didn't want to take that chance. And now we can put our cover and the pickup ring in place. And I think that looks super cool. Nice. I guess now we're ready for some strings. For this build, I'm going to tune this to open G. So for that, I want to use the A string, the D string, and the G string. You could use other ones if you want, but that's just what I'm going to use for this tuning. It's not hard and fast set in stone, so to speak, but that's what I'm using for this. Just so you know. I've got a bone nut blank here. I'm just going to drop into place. This is not shaped. It's way too tall, but I just want something to kind of hold the strings up that we'll be able to make some marks on once we're strung up. It's making its first sound. Whew. Intonation's a mess. We haven't set that yet. Really, right now, we need to focus on getting this nut height set correctly. Normally to do this, I would use a stack of feeler gauges to whatever the height I need, and I would use that to scribe the top of the nut, and then we can file it to shape from there. But I mentioned earlier that Geiker had sent me over some things to try out. One of those items is a tool used to precisely scribe the height of your guitar's nut. So here's the tool as it comes in the packaging. We have a pack of lead and the tool itself. And what this is a nut scribe, and it has a little adjustment on here that you can set according to the laser etched markings to scribe whatever markings you need to on your guitar's nut. In the end here, there's a little recess where you can put a little piece of lead. Just put that in there. You do have to sharpen the lead. Once you put the lead in, then you can do your scribing, make your adjustment, tighten down the lock nut. Once you get it set, you can then lay this on top of your frets and use this to scribe your fretboard radius right on the nut. For that, it works great. I really like this tool in concept. However, in my time spent messing with it and using it on this build, I've noticed a couple of inaccuracies that I've passed along to Geiker. Hopefully they're able to make some changes, and maybe we'll see a version 2. If you want to check this out though a little bit closer, I'm going to put a link down below in the description to their webpage. This is available. I just think it needs just a couple small changes, and this has the potential to be super cool. Now that we have some marks to file to, let's take this inside on the setup bench where we can finish filing the nut, cut the nut slots, do a quick setup, intonation, string height, the whole 9 yards. Let's get this thing ready to play. I've got one last final touch, a little gold knob. Voila, that looks cool. And that completes this build. Let's go try it out. I am really happy with the way this turned out. I love the red and gold accents. I think it just came together really well. The same gold accents carry through on the back, and the spalted maple heel cap of the neck looks super cool too. Of course, let's not forget the gold Goto tuners, as well as the mother of pearl fretboard markers accented by that thin brass line. I think it's time to see how this flat surface mount humbucker really sounds.
It works, it's alive. Another thing that's kind of cool is since it has a 20-inch radius, it's still fairly easy to grab a slide and do any slide moves. I just wish I had some fancy slide licks. Well, this is going to wrap up the building of this cigar box guitar. This is a 5-part series. If you haven't seen all of the episodes, I'm going to put a link down below in the description to the playlist. You can go watch all of the episodes. This is a fun one. I'm going to spend a little bit more time playing around on it. Maybe I have to fine-tune this setup just a little bit as everything kind of settles in, but overall, this thing is done. It turned out awesome. I'm really happy with the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it plays, and all of it. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you guys next time. It's upside down. Guitar, I gotta play you upside down because, well, it's not made for a lefty.